How many times have we been told that the MAGA movement is supposed to be this movement that is going to preserve our free speech? And then we learn that Donald Trump is calling over to news agencies and trying to exert editorial control over their content. But first, if you want to support independent progressive media and help me make it to 1,000 subscribers, please remember to hit that subscribe button. I'm trying to reach 1,000 before the end of the year, and I would very much appreciate your support. Now, Donald Trump only won this election by less than 2% of the popular vote. More people voted against Trump than they did for him. But that has not stopped MAGA from claiming they have this wide-ranging mandate for Trump to do whatever the hell he wants. They are more emboldened now than ever. And I really think it's starting to manifest in some very, very creepy ways. We all knew that Trump had these authoritarian ambitions, but we just learned that he was so upset by a recent Greg Kelly news segment that he called over to Newsmax and to dictate that they cover Pete Hegseth more favorably. And Greg Kelly is no liberal. Greg Kelly isn't even a centrist. Greg Kelly is a Trump sycophant who is a staunch supporter of the MAGA movement. And just to set this up a little bit, Greg Kelly tried his best to set things up in the right way before he started listing his criticisms of Pete Hegseth. He was complimenting and laying praise on Trump, and then he did his criticism. And then after the criticism of Pete Hegseth, he was praising Donald Trump again. So he kind of gave him this compliment sandwich with the nasty Pete Hegseth in the middle, and apparently it was not good enough for Donald Trump. So let's go ahead and take a look at Greg Kelly praising Donald Trump, and then we'll take a look at what he had to say about Hegseth.
All right. Again, I love Trump. I love the policies. I love the style. I consider him a friend. He has given me personal advice that has been incredibly valuable. He is so insightful. And he knows, and I know, and you know, that he's not perfect. He'll admit when he makes a mistake, like Milley. Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, he appointed him to that job. And he turned out to be a disaster. He turned out to be mutinous. I don't blame Donald Trump for that. I blame him for that. The man was lying to Trump's face every step of the way to get that job. He lied to the American people, Milley did. He's not Superman. He's not President Trump. We know that. He is pretty damn close, though.
So Greg Kelly puts Trump up there, right there with Superman, but then goes on to lie about how Mark Milley was somehow lying to get the job in the Trump administration. I don't even know what the hell he's talking about there. And then he tries to say that, you know, Trump doesn't always get it right, which is quite bold for somebody in the MAGA movement, considering you don't hear many of them at all making the slightest criticism of Donald Trump. So for Greg Kelly to come out and say that maybe Trump doesn't get everything right was a little bit shocking. But unfortunately for him, that wasn't good enough for Donald Trump, because he went on to criticize Pete Hegseth quite ruthlessly. Greg Kelly is not a fan. He doesn't think that Pete Hegseth should be the next Secretary of Defense, and I tend to agree with him. Pete Hegseth seems like a terrible, terrible dude. He's got a whole bunch of skeletons in his closet, and Greg Kelly points those out here.
And that brings me to Pete Hegseth. You know what? This is MAGA. Are we going to be like China? Are we going to be like the Democrats? If you step out of line, ooh, they're going to hurt you so bad. They're going to primary you. They're going to audit you. They're going to... Pete Hegseth is no Matt Gaetz. He hasn't done nearly enough for MAGA to warrant the Department of Defense job. And he's got serious baggage. Serious baggage. It happens sometimes. Not every pick is perfect. Where do I get this stuff, by the way? Not from the fake news, but from this guy. Tim Parlatore is Hegseth's attorney, and he's been making all kinds of statements that I don't think are particularly helpful to Tim Hegseth, like confirming everything in the New York Times story, and it's just... So he's putting out some information himself. And the email from the mom to Pete in 2018 made some people upset, right?
So I find it pretty funny that he was trying to mock Democrats there, saying that, oh, if they step out of line, they're going to get hurt. But that is exactly what Trump is trying to do. Greg Kelly is the one that is currently stepping out of line, and we now know that Trump is not too happy about it. But I could not agree with Greg Kelly more. Pete Hegseth is a terrible, terrible candidate. He is not qualified to be the next Secretary of Defense. And I think that Greg Kelly is right to call him out here. And he goes on to say that, you know, he's got some major, major issues. So good for Greg Kelly for pointing this stuff out. Unfortunately, he is pretty much in alignment with virtually all other Trump picks. But at least he had the stones to call Pete Hegseth out.
Really nice, right? But there are some problems here. Sorry, big time. According to Pete's lawyer, Pete is blackmailable. 2 years before that email was sent, Pete Hegseth was conferring with President Trump at Trump Tower about high-level political appointments, maybe even as Secretary of Veterans Affairs. He was at the Trump Tower, he had that conversation, and that's fine, right? But 2 years later, he is blackmailed by a woman who falsely accuses him, but he pays money to her anyway. Is he a new man? Anybody can be forgiven. I know that. I know that. If you ask for forgiveness, of course.
Now, there is no evidence to suggest that the woman involved in the Pete Hegseth scandal is in any way lying. There is no evidence to suggest she made the whole thing up. In fact, it's Pete Hegseth that bound her to an NDA and paid her money so she wouldn't speak. Are those the types of things that a innocent person does? It really just doesn't even pass the sniff test. I don't know what the hell Greg Kelly is even talking about here. He's criticizing Pete Hegseth, but is unwilling to put the blame on Pete Hegseth for this particular sexual assault allegation. Kind of strange to me. But, again, I agree with Greg Kelly that Hegseth is a terrible, terrible pick. But unfortunately, in the MAGA universe, going against Trump is not okay. Stepping out of line is gonna get you in trouble because you guys are in a fascist movement. This is what fascist leaders do. Any criticism, anybody that steps out of line, you must be punished or you must be cast out. This is scary, scary stuff. And to learn that Donald Trump even called over to Newsmax and got a hold of the CEO and demanded that they cover Pete Hegseth in a more favorable way should be alarming to each and every American. This is not normal stuff. And how many times did we hear how wrong it was for Biden to call over to Twitter to try to get them to take down Hunter Biden dick pics? And he wasn't even president? And that was a bridge too far for the MAGA movement. But I would contend that this is even worse. Let's go ahead and take a look at this article. Will result in termination. Newsmax bans criticism of Pete Hegseth after Trump fumed over host's attack. Let's go ahead and read a little bit. Newsmax instructed staff to lay off Pete Hegseth, the Fox News host Donald Trump nominated to serve as his Secretary of Defense, after a segment bashing the pick sparked the ire of Trump himself. Soon after the segment, Trump's team got in touch with Newsmax CEO Chris Rudy to express the president-elect's displeasure with the commentary, multiple sources told Mediaite. 3 sources said Trump also called Rudy directly to complain about the segment, though Newsmax disputed this. In a statement, the network said, President Trump never called Mr. Rudy about the Hegseth nomination, and he never expressed dissatisfaction with Greg Kelly's show in any way. Now, you can come to the conclusion about whether or not you believe that. I currently do not believe that. Either way, word made it to Newsmax that Trump was furious. One insider said Rudy was shook after word came Trump was displeased. That sparked action at the network, sources said. On Friday, Newsmax Chief Operating Officer Elliot Jacobson convened staff at its New York headquarters to issue guidance in what one source described as an aggressive, panicked tone. Jacobson said that on-air coverage of Hegseth needed to focus on the positive. The source said Jacobson told staff that if guests bring up Hegseth, hosts should explain to the viewers that the claims against him are allegations, and then they should pivot. Any issues following this will result in termination, the executive warned. Let me repeat that. Any issues following this will result in termination. Wild, wild stuff. Not all hosts heeded the mandate. Kelly expressed some muted criticism of Hegseth on his show on Friday night. The reason this is so terrifying is because this is how fascist movements work. They try to lay claim to the media environment. They try to shape the narrative. They try to get their cronies to shape the narrative for them. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. And I know that Newsmax has the right to run whatever story they want in whichever way they would like, but a president-elect should not be calling news agencies and demanding that they cover stories differently, especially when you are explicitly stating that, hey, this story makes me look bad. You need to fix it and cover things more favorably. Because Donald Trump doesn't believe the rules apply to him. Donald Trump thinks he is right in everything he does, and therefore, he is not going to accept any criticism or any feedback. This is chilling stuff, and it is completely antithetical to the spirit of the First Amendment. Free speech is not supposed to be impeded by a president-elect trying to control the narrative like this. And could you imagine if Biden tried to reach out to CNN to try to get a story twisted around like that? Conservative minds would explode. And I would be calling it out as well, because that is not what a president should be doing. That is completely against the types of values this country was founded on. But, again, this is how fascist movements work. They want to control the media. They want to control the narrative. If you step out of line, boom, you are going to get punished. And so, I know Trump isn't president yet, but if this is any indication as to how he is going to be acting when he does get sworn in, we got to keep our eye on this stuff. This is not okay. We need to call it out every single time, push back against this, and we need to, take legal action against this type of stuff if Trump is going to try to explicitly go against the First Amendment like this. This is unacceptable stuff, and it should not be tolerated or normalized by the American people. Donald Trump is planning a fascist takeover of our government, and our media environment is going to be a check against that. Hopefully. But if Trump is trying to influence in this way, it's going to be a much steeper hill to climb. So we're going to keep our eye on it and be calling it out every step of the way. Donald Trump and his fascist behavior should not be normalized. I will leave it there for now. If you guys got anything out of this video, please do remember to smash that like button and subscribe. Maybe share it with a friend or two. I'd very much appreciate that. Like I said, I am trying to make it to 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year. I am in my final stretch with less than 100 to go, and I would very much appreciate your support. If you want to see another authoritarian move by Donald Trump's pick for the director of the FBI, go ahead and watch that video on the screen now. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on the next one.